Hello everyone and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about what I believe are the top 5 skills that you need to be successful in a cloud engineering space. My name's Chris, I'm a Google Cloud engineer. I've been working in this space for a few years now, and this channel is dedicated to sharing my experience and helping anybody else that's looking to get involved. The first skill on our list is being familiar with a cloud platform technology. When I say this, I'm referring to either Azure, Google or AWS. These are the main three though, and being proficient in any one of these is essential in any cloud engineering role. And that's not to say that if you learn Google, you can only work in Google. A lot of the concepts and understanding are transferable between platforms. It's just going to be a case of you'll have to familiarize yourself with the different GUI and different commands. Each of the cloud providers do offer training. AWS has a lot of training available, additionally GCP and Azure. Personally, I am a GCP engineer, so I will always work towards that. However, I do familiarize myself with AWS and Azure. If you're not sure which platform you want to work with, there's a couple of things you can do. One of which is look at job websites, places like Indeed and Monster. Any of these, have a look for cloud engineer, and if your desire is to work in that space with no preference, look for what's popular is one option. If there's high demand for AWS engineers, then have a look at AWS. The alternative and the more difficult route to take is to be a niche. So you'll often find that the demand for GCP engineers is much lower because they own a much smaller space of the market. But that's not to say that people don't want GCP engineers at the same time. Your other choice for making up your mind is to actually just start working with the tools. I have worked with Azure. It's not my cup of tea. I have worked with GCP. I really like the GUI. I really like the interface. And I've also dabbled with AWS, which I like as well. So you have them two avenues to make a decision which way you want to go. The second skill I think is essential for being successful in a cloud engineer role is infrastructure as code. When I say this, I'm referring to the likes of Terraform, CloudFormation, and Resource Manager. These tools are essential for large enterprise scale infrastructure management. In this respect, you have a reusable bulk of code that you can lift and shift and apply to any infrastructure. If you build an infrastructure on GCP with VMs, networking, firewall rules, Cloud Run, an entire enterprise scale deployment, you can take that code and you can redeploy it in another project, you can redeploy it in another business, you can share the code, it doesn't matter. Completely manageable through that infrastructure as code tool. My personal preference is I use Terraform. I use it on a daily basis. I used it in my last 2 jobs. I also use it for my personal projects and my educational learning. Skill number 3 comes as a bit of a curveball because whilst I have been in this space, I have noticed a trend 5 so years ago where there was high demand and then all of a sudden it disappeared because the GUI tools did it for us, and now it seems to be making a comeback. And of course I'm talking about networking. Now with networking, I feel it is a crucial foundation for the understanding of how all the platforms communicate with each other, because of course we have cross-platform communication between GCP, AWS and Azure, and with tools like Anthos. There's also, when you are required to build an infrastructure for a customer, it will be your responsibility, maybe not solely, but you'll be involved with the IP addressing and the general sort of design of the networking in that VPC. By VPC, I mean virtual private cloud. If I was going to learn networking, I would look at something like a networking focus course. Whilst AWS, GCP and Azure all offer their platform level networking courses, I would be pushing and leaning more towards the likes of CompTIA or CCNA. They really offer the ground foundations of understanding subnetting, hexadecimal, conversions, and general sort of like scaling of IP addresses and basic networking concepts such as BGP, RIP, and also it's important to understand the OSI model in terms of troubleshooting any issues you might be having on the network when you're building your infrastructure. Fourth skill I think you'll need when working as a cloud engineer is automation. Now I don't want this to be confused with the programming, because I know when I was learning I was like, but I'm not a programmer, why am I going to learn Python or Bash or something like that? But there is a difference between programming and automation, and the automation side of it is 100% a skill that I use on a daily basis. When I am building anything either through CI/CD pipelines, or even if it's in Terraform using my infrastructure as code, I am using Bash automation in that code. Now if I was to pick a language for just getting started in automation for cloud engineering specifically, whilst Python is fun and it's a very, very powerful tool, I would actually go for Bash, because I have worked in a few companies and every time when I'm looking at my CI/CD pipelines, the tools, steps and even my API calls are all done in Bash. So I would become very familiar with writing Bash automation and just understanding how to make my way around a terminal in a Bash terminal. So where moving around folders, making directories, creating new files, and then also any other what if statements, if else statements that you could work with. Now just before I go to the number one skill I think you're going to need to be a successful cloud engineer, I just want to say thank you very much for making it this far in the video. If you enjoy this content, please like it and subscribe, so that will encourage me and support me in making more videos like this. It's what I want to do. I want to share my learnings. If there's anything specific that you want me to talk about, please feel free to leave a comment. I will reply directly to you, and thank you again. So the number one skill that I think you're going to need for being successful in cloud engineering is Kubernetes. Kubernetes is everywhere at the moment. It is the buzzword. It is on nearly every single job application, job advertisement that I have seen over the last year. I recently changed jobs again, and every interview I had, I was asked, what's my experience with Kubernetes and containerization? Do I understand it? Have I administered it? And would I be able to work with it on a daily basis? So when I say Kubernetes, I mean, I'm not expecting you to go out and wait until you are a Kubernetes expert to go and apply for jobs. I'm saying I think it would be beneficial for you to understand the basic concepts, to understand what a pod is, to understand what a deployment is, to understand the services and how they work. I also believe it would be beneficial to understand Docker and how Docker containerizes applications, because a lot of the day-to-day role I'll be involved with building pipelines and managing pipelines, and inside there is the step of the containerization of the application that is built with a Docker file. If I didn't understand how a Docker file worked, then it would make my day-to-day job a little bit difficult. Now I'm not saying that I know how to write a Docker file, because I'm working on that, but I would say I understand the concept enough that I can work with it on a daily basis. So there you have it. They're the top 5 skills I think you'll need to be successful in either applying for a cloud engineer role or just progressing within your current role. I'm speaking from my personal experience of coming from 0 to where I am now, and it has helped me tremendously. A takeaway from this video is that whilst I'm saying these are skills that I think are very relevant right now in 2023 to be able to be successful in a cloud engineer role, these skills are going to be changing regularly. Right now I'm hearing a lot of noise about prompts and leveraging AI to actually make our work a little bit smoother, make it a bit easier. I use it on a day-to-day basis, and I'll probably make a video about that too. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.